Ole Miss took a couple of lumps, Mason. They've got a couple of losses. 2 losses is not the worst thing in the world in the SEC at this point. There's other teams with 2 losses. Ole Miss is still hanging in there, but they can't take another one. Now they got to go on the road to Arkansas, who just had an offensive explosion this past week, right? And we know that Arkansas is much improved this season versus where they were at last season. This offensive line is a ton better. This team can run the football effectively now. Taylor Green, we saw maybe the best form of him right last week, at least throwing the ball wise, over 300 yards passing, a bunch of touchdowns. Um, Jaquindon Jackson, we're thinking is going to be able to maybe work his way back over the next couple of weeks. I don't know if it'll be for this game, but over the next couple of weeks, they're going to need some help at running back, it seems like. Um, and I'm really more interested beyond all that. All that is very exciting for Arkansas, no doubt. But this defensive line versus this Ole Miss offensive line, I think is the most intriguing matchup in this football game. Arkansas's starting group on that defensive line is not a bad group, guys. They've been left out to dry several times by the offense that has been really good at times and had really tough times this season, right? It's been inconsistent. And namely with turnovers. When Arkansas doesn't turn the football over, they're very difficult to defend. I mean, they are very difficult to defend. And those games where they did turn the ball over, they turned it over 2, 3 times. And like I said, left the defense out to dry. If Arkansas can play clean football on the offensive side, really like the matchup of Arkansas's defensive line against this Ole Miss offensive line that I think has not been very impressive. It's a bunch of mosh posh of guys from all over the country, a bunch of transfers this year. 4 out of 5 guys on that Ole Miss offensive line were transfers. Now, I mean, at this point in the season, we're in week 10. Every position group has got guys that are banged up, and Ole Miss is no different on the offensive line. So I don't think it was that strong of an O-line to begin with. It's even more banged up and wore down at this point in the season. That is the big matchup of this football game to me. Is those lines of scrimmage, specifically Arkansas's D line versus that Ole Miss offensive line, and then you can kind of flip it around because I think the strength of this Ole Miss team is their defensive line, right? And how is Arkansas's offensive line going to be able to hold those guys at bay to be able to run the football? A lot of read option stuff goes on with Taylor Green in this offense. It's pretty tough to defend. I think that Arkansas is going to be able to attack the edges a little bit. The Arkansas run game is head and shoulders above the Ole Miss run game at this point. And if Arkansas is able to run the ball successfully in this one and hold Ole Miss at bay, man, I think Arkansas's got a pretty direct path to victory here. Plus 6.5. Arkansas is obviously the underdog. Over under set at 55. Before I give my prediction on this, what is your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you that when you look at Ole Miss's offensive line, they've had some holes, right? And I don't know if there's another team I could point to right now on Arkansas' schedule that I look at and say, okay, that offensive line was pretty comparable. But nonetheless, to me, if Arkansas is going to win this football game, that they've really got to get to Jackson Dart, get into the backfield, slow the running game down. I think Henry Parrish has been one of the best running backs in the SEC so far. The numbers really just kind of prove that. They're averaging almost 5 yards per rush in total, but the passing game is really where Ole Miss makes their makes their hay or puts the hay in the barn or whatever little saying there I'm trying to say, but when I look at Ole Miss, I'm wondering a little bit about Trey Harris. What is his status going into this football game? I think he's going to be ready to play, but we saw Ole Miss kind of missing him. I would say in the game against Oklahoma. That's a really good Oklahoma defense, and it seemed like they were sputtering at times on offense to move the football, and without having Trey Harris there as that safety valve, as he's already had about 900 yards through the air. I think having him would be very, very helpful. Seemed like the game plan without him was to go more to the tight ends, at least early in that game. I saw them targeting the tight ends a good bit more. So what is his status moving forward? That's a big question for me. And then for Arkansas on the other side of the football, another playmaker that could be missing, Jaquindon Jackson. He's a huge part of this offense. Now he didn't go this week. We saw Russell have a really good game, and the Arkansas run game just did not miss a beat going up against the worst SEC defense in Mississippi State. But also, Russell, what is his status? I saw Big Zero running down the football field with a huge run this past week against Mississippi State, and looked like he maybe pulled a hammy. So, what is his status? Was it just a cramp? Maybe. I'm not really sure what's going to happen there and what his status is moving forward. If you're an Arkansas fan and please let us know in the comment section because I do think that he is a huge part of this offense, especially if Jackson is not able to go. But really, when I look at Taylon Green, I mean, this guy is doing everything that Bobby Petrino is asking him to do and then some. Playing like an absolute stud at quarterback. And to me, if he gets going against this Ole Miss defense, which has been really good, then it could be a long day for Ole Miss. Playing on the road at Arkansas, I really like Arkansas in this matchup. To be honest with you, Mark, I'm looking at Arkansas and this offense just coming off of a 51-point performance against Mississippi State. This is really going to be probably the best defense that they have faced, other than maybe Tennessee. And I still think that Ole Miss is better than Tennessee on the defensive side of the football. But can they score?
Really?
Like that's the biggest question to me. Can Arkansas score against this Ole Miss defense? I think that they really need to be in the 30s. Whichever team gets to 30 might be the one that ends up winning this football game. But I like Arkansas in this matchup. I know they're 6.5-point dogs, but playing at home, backs against the wall, offense is playing much better as Bobby Petrino installs his offensive system. Give me Arkansas, not just to cover, but to win this one outright.
Yeah, I like Arkansas in this one as well. I want the plus. I want plus the points, but I like how this is setting up for Arkansas. Certainly, going to be a big one there in Fayetteville. Going to be a packed house. Arkansas fans are going to be excited for this one. I think this is just a really good matchup for Arkansas.